so we are going to start. Thank you for coming. Tonight is Baptiste Farkas. He's a French artist based in Paris. He works with immateriality, and tonight he's going to show part of his work, which is based in services. And in the second part of the talk, he's going to show some documentation that has been made today during a workshop called Out of Order workshop, which was, the principle was destroying objects, that he's going to explain.
Thank you. So unfortunately my English is not so good, I can speak like that, but I prefer to read and to show images at the same time. It would be better, I think, that speaking like that. I don't like to improvise, I'm sorry. In the work, yes, but not in the lecture. So I've prepared something. I will show my work in general, firstly, and secondly, I will explain what is this out-of-order workshop that we've done today, and then we show you images from today. So, as an introduction, I would like to expose my point of view. I consider that the art object is a burden. It has become inessential. So here you can see a typical exhibition situation in Paris. It's very famous. It's in Grand Palais. It's a very big place, and every 3 years there is very big exhibitions, but very classical exhibitions. And once I was invited there, but I did not want to expose there. I wanted to do something differently. In the present context, removing is a major gesture. Our opinion of authorship, based upon the idea that there is one single author behind each work of art, is a delusion, a shortcut that has to be rethought. So it's a big program. The exhibition is an outdated stylistic device that needs to be abandoned in favor of other approaches, such as maneuvers or operations. And I will explain the word operation. So let's say goodbye to this situation, and this is my proposal. Instead of work of art, subtraction, and that was the case today with the OO workshop. I will explain why. Instead of exhibition, operation. Instead of single author, collaboration. The less. The abundance of everything disturbs me. This is why the less plays a central, vital role in the approach I have gradually elaborated. In my opinion, the less is a way out, an exit, or even maybe the way out. I think it's not possible to do things. We have to think about it, and maybe to find strategies to remove. Okay. This idea can be summarized in a few words. Too much of everything lasts for less. Excuse me, it takes time with the... Through two identities, IKEA services and glitch, a lot more of less. The term glitch signifies a malfunction. I think you know that term in Norway. It's famous, no? The glitch in music, etc. Through two identities, IKEA services and glitch, a lot more of less. I spread services. And this is the two logotypes I use since 1998, 2002. And this is what I call a service, instructions that are waiting to be put into practice. Instructions that are waiting to be put into practice. To be used. Examples, slow-mo, the decelerator. It's a recent one, created in 2006, something like that. The idea is very simple, to act with an exaggerated slowness. In the context of an inauguration in 2009, the activation of the service consisted in slowing down, without somebody knowing it, the work of a waiter who was in charge of the buffet, predominantly filled with drinks. You can see in the photo the situation. Nobody was knowing that, in fact, the waiter was activating the service slow-mo. So you were waiting for your drink, and it was taking a very long time. And then people were very angry, and it was really interesting. I have written a variant of slow-mo. I've named it "To Waste One's Time." The instructions for use of this service are very simple. To put it into practice, you just have to waste your time, to squander it. And I've presented this in the United States, and that was pretty weird, because for American people it's very strange, this idea to waste time. Another service, cancellation of spaces, the temporary seizure of a space, physical or virtual, designed by the client. So a lot of different spaces, for example, mirror, exhibition space, entrance door, etc., etc. A lot of activations since 2001. Furniture, the guy who done that was architect, and he cancelled his furniture, and then it was creating chaos in his home. And for him it was interesting, because everybody was saying that he was too I don't know, harsh, something strict. Another example, Fight the Power, externalization of repressed tensions, spirit of rebellion, animosity, hatred. This one is pretty difficult to activate. The service provides the necessary assistance for this act of eradication. And here you can see an activation of the service in Paris. I work with an agent. His name is Guillaume Olivierville, and he's specialized in conceptual and minimal art in Paris. And one day he was pretty angry, and he activated the service. You can see it's before at the top, and after at the bottom, and here a detail. So he broke his mirror in his kitchen. My services privilege experience, assuming their full meaning in the leap from speculation to execution. They do their best to trip up routine. In place of a limited but profitable commodity art, they propose the open-ended, evolving principle of services, collaborative effort based on a radical element of nasty surprises. It is a story in the making, and each new participation contributes an additional episode. For example, episode today was an episode in the story of Out of Order Studio. When someone asks me to qualify my practice, I state that instead of displaying art products, I operate in everyday reality. What does it mean precisely? For me, this is what this expression signifies. To operate in everyday reality characterizes an art practice that relegates art to the background in order to conquer everyday reality. It's maybe a little bit complicated. To complete this definition, I would also say that most of the time to operate in everyday reality is an infringement. So we've seen it in the slow-mo activation. This is why to operate in everyday reality has to be done without somebody knowing it in an unfair kind of way. Lastly, the intention to relegate art to the background differentiates to operate in everyday reality from previous famous designations, such as happenings, of course, or performances, because I don't like the word performance, because if we say that it is performance, for me it's finished, it's already known. It's much more interesting to do that like infringements in very special kind of ways. In other words, through, okay, I've got a big role in that because it's a big work to connect all the people and to activate all of the time new services or old services, etc. etc. In other words, through IKEA Service and Glitch, I remove, I diminish, I fail, I destroy, I undermine, I conceive art practice at the straight opposite of assertions. And I am not particularly worried about art. My attitude is the incarnation of a way to be in the world in which art is only a stage. So maybe you know the approach of people like Robert Filiou, or in France we have Biennale de Paris, which promotes that kinds of ideas. Maybe it's a little bit disgusting. We are not yet everything when we move as useful members of society. The history of the ideas presents several episodes in this lust for less. Hegel expresses lust for less when he invites us to find strange in looking at the negative right in the eye. I give you examples in the history. Adolf Loos, okay, expresses lust for less when he claims, I have freed humanity from the superfluous ornament. 1930. Fred Sandbach, American artist, sculptor, he was working with links. It's very interesting, making very big exhibitions with very small links passing through exhibition spaces. It was in the 60s. Fred Sandbach, when he inspires sculpture with the less is more spirit during the 60s. Douglas Huebler, American artist too, when he announces in 1968, and this sentence is very famous, I quote, "The world is full of objects, more or less interesting. I do not wish to add any more. I prefer simply to state the existence of things in terms of time and or place." That's great. Douglas Huebler. Nearer to us in the 90s, Bernard Brunon, maybe Stephen spoke about Bernard Brunon, expresses lust for less as well when he states the motto for his company, That's Painting Productions, I quote, "With less to look out, there's more to think about." With less to look out, there's more to think about. Three special examples have left marks on my approach: Carmelo Bene, Gustav Metzger, Ivan Illich. And with the last one, Ivan Illich, you will see the link with the work we've done today. When he removes Romeo from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet in 1976, Carmelo Bene commits a crime and reveals an obvious fact at the same time, deleting one seemingly essential character to the story is a way to boost or to restart the story. Romeo's disappearance reinforces another character, Mercutio. So the less gives strength. It's like a paradox. With the Auto-Destructive Arts Manifesto, written in 1959, Gustav Metzger pushes art practice under zero. Here you can see notes from his first lecture in 1960. He was living in London at this time. For him, art practice is the best place to welcome human negativity. I quote, "Auto-destructive art is not simply the therapeutic instrument of a frustrated iconoclast, but a coherent, necessary phase in the development of art." So it's, for me, it's new, this kind of thinking art at this time, in the early 60s, it's incredible, I think. Indeed, it is remarkable that the idea emerged so late in the century, he was saying at this time. Okay, and now Ivan Illich. Here it's a famous cover in France of his the best book of Ivan Illich, La Convivialité. The English title of the book is Tools for Conviviality. In Tools for Conviviality, 1973, Ivan Illich criticized fiercely the foundation of human modernity. Better than everyone else, he shows how, in the near future, it will be necessary to recognize natural scales and limits. I quote, "We must come to admit that only within limits can machines take the place of slaves. Beyond these limits, they lead a new kind of serfdom." He tackles, Illich, our taste for the excess and proposes to quickly put an end to growth mania. Alas, nothing changed since the 70s. Against unlimited mass production, which is responsible for unlimited tools, he imagines austerity. That's the these of the book, austerity, which paradoxically is not severe but convivial. The word was chosen by Illich to designate the opposite of industrial productivity. You can find the reference. À chaque fois, each time I show a photo, you can find the reference. I quote, "People must learn to live within bounds. Survival depends on people learning fast what they cannot do. They must learn to abstain from unlimited progeny, consumption and use. If, as Illich does, we consider that to decrease is an urgency, it is obvious that art practices are moving about in the wrong way. Cultural spaces are today as filled with art objects as they were in the 19th century, or even more. Actually, it's incredible. Every exhibition you see, it's plenty of objects, art objects. Okay, now I give you a small conclusion for this part of the lecture. Each second, about 20 works of art are created in the world according to an estimation realized by Caroline Kepigurita in 2009 as a part of the Biennale de Paris, a project I work in. Because of that, at the start of this new century, isn't it lust for less a justified desire? Through examples, I showed how the less has sporadically punctuated the history of the ideas. I think that it is time to go further now by making the less a cause at the center of our continuous effort. Okay, so now it will be much more practical. OO workshop. Let's see how the less appears in my practice. I've shown some examples before, but now let's explore this service in particular out of the workshop. The service was created in 2002, so 10 years ago. It actually belongs to the collection of Fonds Régional d'Art Contemporain Poitou-Charentes in Angoulême in France. It's kind of collection from the government, so it's a little bit strange, but it works. This is the idea: useless, impractical, embarrassing. Give us the objects you want to get rid of. Options: WDI, we do it for you. The original idea was that you come with things and we have people there who are destroying things for you. service profile, instructions for use, service profile, object destruction workshop. The object provided is destroyed according to a ritual of the owner's design. So it is exactly what we've done today. Prerequisites, homogeneous measured crew, filiations, Gustave Metzger, Carmelo Bene, Yvan Illich, Éric Vattier, which is a French artist, and his work consists in asking other artists what they destroyed in their life, and he's making an archive, it's very interesting, with artist distractions. Since a very long time, maybe 15 years, something like that. Remarks: to keep the OO workshop from turning into a spectacle, it is necessary to adopt an extremely diligent attitude during the executions of the service and remain both measured and precise in the destructive act. The mechanism is very simple. It happens sometimes in schools, but not only, of course. It happens sometimes in institutions. Sometimes it happened at home. So it's strange, somewhere in home. The mechanism is very simple. A text distributed in different forms invites the event's potential public to come and meet us with an object they wish to put out of order, destroy. On site, and here it's photos from 2003. It was a big event in Paris. It's called Nuit Blanche, White Night. Maybe you've got this here now. In Scandinavia, je crois, it exists, no? Nuit Blanche? No, it's maybe not here. No. It's art during all the night.
Yeah, there's a space also about public spaces and like having things happening all night.
A lot of cities now are proposing that kind of event. It's very, it's somewhere it's absolutely awful. But at this time it was interesting because the service was 1 year old, and it was for me an opportunity to do crazy things, because we had maybe 300 people there bringing things to destroy. It was absolutely crazy. On site, a crew composed of 1 head and 3 assistants. You can see it there. I call executioners, like you know, when you executioner, I don't know the word, if you know the word. Selection of basic tools: saw, sledgehammer, pliers, saw, etc. Several tables, execution blocks, and a giant dustbin here. I will explain why. 2 details concerning the execution are essential. With the approach of the final phase, loss, dispossession, the owners chose the scenario for the destruction of the object they brought. It's like an exchange. You lose the object, but you invent a story, something, a scenario. It's totally immaterial. It's like losing the object to get something else, a story or something, a trip. The object destroyed could not be retrieved. It had to be thrown away. This is why the dustbin here. You can't keep the object after it has been destroyed, because maybe it's too beautiful, or I don't know. I'll show you an example. This was in 2005 in France, in Brest. We worked with a school there, a school of art. And in this particular case, it's an example of scenario of history. The scenario was consisting in making 3 stripes, combining a separation letter, split letter, and the typewriter in which that split letter was written, making 3 stripes with the letter and the typewriter. And that was pretty difficult to do, during maybe 1 hour or maybe a little bit more, and it was difficult to not destroy the paper, because when you use electric saw, etc., it was pretty difficult. But this is the result. That was good, I think. She agreed, and then we throw it away. A quick overview of reactions recorded during several realizations. Here, bank cards. So we have one today. If you want to see it when you leave the place.
I can bring it.
Yeah, okay. We've had a lot of bank cards, things like that, official documents, a lot of things. This is another one. There is a variant of the service which is dedicated to documents. So, quick overview of reactions recorded during several realizations. Client X quite judiciously neutralized the OO workshop, saying that she only owned things she used and thus could not provide us with anything. Indeed, the project, doing more with less, draws its meaning from the idea of bringing out the absurdity of the superfluous, and thus could not be carried out in a situation where the basic essentials are lacking. It is aimed at the overloaded Western society, so it's good here in Norway. I think we can destroy things. Up in the trash. Many people wanted to keep the broken, burned, etc. Remains with the idea that giving up an object of value would permit them to acquire an object of art. In order to discourage them, the demolished objects, without exception, all wound up in the trash. So without exception, never. Here you can see a realization in Nicosie, Cyprus. You know it, it's near Greece. And this realization, activation of the service was pretty wide. A lot of things were destroyed. Clocks, computers, and after a moment they decided to break all in the room. So that was... What if it were beautiful, this aesthetic of destruction? In a strategy of neutralizing the extremely fascinating aesthetic dimension of destruction, we attempted to minimize as much as possible the final and ultimately ordinary act, destroying, by placing the emphasis on everything preceding it, the original intimate dialogue undertaken with the object's owner. And it's important when it's pure public from the outside. The idea is to have a very good relationship with the people coming with. We speak, can take time, it's very interesting. We speak about destruction, the actual situation of the world, etc., etc. And maybe discussions are more interesting than the fact to destroy things. It's maybe the most important part of that work. How to distinguish this action from sacrifice?